Hi there. I'm Diana Liz, and I'm having a conversation with a fellow brain health coach, and I'll let her introduce herself.
And I'm Pam, and I'm with TruTransformations. And I've been having some issues lately with my blood sugar. And so Diane and I have been kind of gapping a little bit about it because it's just been interesting. Some of the things that I'm curious about is I've read that caffeine for some people can cause it to spike a little bit. And every morning I have been having green tea. It's mango flavored and it's saffron infused. And I had been forgetting to include that when I was writing down in my food journal and when we were talking about it. And so I noticed that it, it would run because I would do that before I'd have a smoothie. So I was thinking that my smoothie might have been my culprit. But it would be like 117. So this morning, I did my fasting blood sugar and I checked it, and it was 107. So for dinner, I had about 6 ounces of chicken breast, and I had a half a cup of cottage cheese with a half a cup of cantaloupe. And I also had probably a cup, maybe a little over a cup of mixture of corn and peas. And I mean, that's pretty much it. And I did not do my caffeine.
Mhm.
So what do you think?
I think that's great, and the improvement is wonderful. Cantaloupe is a tropical fruit, and most tropical fruits are off the list.
Yeah.
And if you do indulge, just a tiny little sliver. And yeah, um, I'm also having the same issues, and I've been struggling to stay pre-diabetic and to move below that line for about 3 years. And I have an apology to make to any person on the planet who struggles or who is type 2 diabetes, because I've never had a weight problem. I've always been able to eat pretty much everything I ever wanted and never had to worry about it. And I always thought, food in, just don't eat it.
Right.
And, it's just very simple. Just
Yeah.
don't eat what you can't eat. No donuts, and, and it's not that simple.
It's
And
not.
and I met with a dietitian, and I met with a nutritionist, and they would all act like it's so simple. And I happened to see a TED talk by Aaron Segal, who is a researcher in Israel. And he discovered using algorithms and a great big huge mainframe computer that it's individual. So each of us has to discover what it is that we can eat.
Right.
And I can eat parsnips, but I can't eat potatoes. I can eat brown basmati rice if I soak it in olive oil and butter. And if I don't, I can't eat it. So just having these discussions and sharing this information is just really vital.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm with you too. I'd never had, I just took it for granted that I could eat whatever I wanted and continue that on. And then suddenly, I was like, oh, wow, I'm having some female hormone changes taking place. And I'm like, well, is that the big reason that's going on, And because, the weight has fluctuated and I've never had a weight issue. I've not ever had to but the BMI, if I look on that, it's not in the obese category. Of course, I like to look at the other compositions, your fat and
Mhm.
everything else. But I'm within range of where I need to be. Now, personally, might like another 10 pounds or so off myself.
You can give them to me. I need 10.
Here you go.
I know. If it were that easy, I would be so happy.
Oh, I wish they were that easy to get rid of. I would gladly give them.
I'd love to take them.
But and so it was like I had worked with patients as a therapist, and I would be like, most of them struggled obviously with obesity or being on the verge of from overweight. And so that's what they were getting, type 2 diabetes. So I never considered that I was going to have that issue. And
Mhm.
then suddenly, I'm going in and my A1, A1C is high and I'm pre-diabetic. And it's like, oh,
Yeah,
hmm,
it's a shock, isn't it?
yeah, it
Wow.
is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
it is.
huge
And then
shock.
you're like, and when you send that individual thing, I can believe it, because I'm the same, we were talking before, and you're like, well, that would normally spike my blood pressure. I mean, not blood pressure, but blood sugar. However, with me, it didn't seem to, affect it.
Mhm.
And so that really does go to prove that.
Well, I'd like to get back to what you said about coffee, because when you mentioned that to me, it lit up a little light bulb in my head. Um, I have ADD. I've had ADD all my life, but when you hit menopause, our bodies change,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden, my ADD that I'd struggled with by using overfocus became an issue. And so I take a supplement. It's not a medication, but it takes the place of Ritalin and Adderall. And it's called SAMe, capital SAM, and then a small e. And it's a stimulant. And all of a sudden I said, I wonder if my SAMe is triggering higher glucose. And then I thought, well, what are all the stimulants that we, there's that people might be taking in along, like Cokes and Red Bulls and things like that. That could also be triggering the glucose, even if they don't have any sugar in them.
And that's true, because I was also taking another supplement, and it has something that is a stimulant. It's not caffeine per se, but it has the same effect. And so, I'm wondering if that might have, and I had been doing that this whole time,
Mm-hmm.
usually in the mornings, and then, and it tastes good. So sometimes I would even have it in the afternoon, as a pick me up. So I'm like, yeah, I feel great. But it was like, okay.
Yeah.
So was that a good thing? Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is hard to know what the culprit is, because
I
yeah,
say plain menopause.
yeah, I hear you, sister.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's, the changes that, and a lot of people don't realize that the changes start at age 35 for most of us. And so, we're coming down, we don't coming down our, what our body's able to do. And we don't realize it. We think we're up here, but in reality, we're way
down
down here.
there,
When we
right?
finally began to have the problems, and the problems of this is sugar issue, and this blood glucose is the effects it has on our brain. And that's why it's so important to both of us.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's it, the brain, and and I had noticed changes. I guess mine really hit more at 40, and then
Yeah.
talk about the other hormone, with the hormones of your thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
So that impacts the brain as well. And so we have all these things that are coming in there. And then my eyesight,
Mhm.
that just recently, I was really concerned about. But as you know, it affects if you have your blood sugars running high,
Mhm.
it affects your eyesight.
Yeah, it sure does. And I saw this description when I was doing some of my work, and they called the thyroid the conductor. So the thyroid
Yeah.
leads everyone else doing their job, playing when they're supposed to be playing a high note or a low note.
Well,
And
my
yeah,
conductor was
so it's just
sleeping, I think.
critical for us.
Yeah, I that really has now that's a whole nother topic we can talk about for sure, is
Yeah,
that
for
one
sure.
with the thyroid.
So
But
what are some tips you have for the things that are working for you now on your blood sugar?
well, I do know that with the smoothie, I believe that not having the full cup of the
Mhm.
strawberries and the blueberries,
Mhm.
cutting that into half, that has helped me to, be more cautious in my serving sizes, because that's kind of sneaky too. You look on there, and if you go over, it's like we were talking about something the other day, and I was like, oops, that's for one serving, and I had two. So it might have been fine for one. Yeah, I know. It might have been good for the one, but hello, it was not good for two. So, that has been something that I've learned that I need to do better. I've been taking I take a product now, though I know I had taken it before. It's mainly an immune modulator, but um, it has beta glucans and lactoferrin in it. And I noticed that when I would take that after a meal, that when I tested, it seemed to be lower than
Wow.
what I would have
Can you
expected.
tell me a little bit more about that product? I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's has prime colostrum. It has, and it's FDA approved for that, and it has, like I said, the beta glucans and the lactoferrin, and it helps to have the immune system, but it almost like as a jump start. Like if you feel like you're going to come down with something, if you've been exposed to something,
Mhm.
or if you even just suspect that you've been in an area that you could have been, you can start taking that. But it has been shown to help with blood sugar.
Mhm. Does
And
it have any fiber in it?
that's a good question. I'll have to look at that. I should have wrote down, and I could actually
Because that's one of the things that is real critical for me is to add more
more
fiber
fiber.
to my meals. And if I'm going to have a piece of fruit, I need to make sure that it has the peeling, and then also be really careful with the fruits. I bought some green bananas, which are really hard to find because they just don't sell them in our stores. But I happen to find some green bananas at Natural Grocers, and I'm going to boil them and freeze them and put a little piece of it because before it's sweetened,
Uh-huh.
it's a starch. It's a resistant starch. It's fiber, and I'm going to put that into my smoothie. And
Oh,
just
that sounds good.
adding additional fiber, I'm eating a lot more fennel, and I like the taste. So whenever I can add it to a salad or something, that works really well. And if I'm going to eat an orange, I only eat half an orange, and I make sure that it's not orange juice because orange juice is a healthy. I mean, it's got so many vitamins in it, but when you don't have the fiber, it hits the body too hard, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Not for us, for maybe the younger people.
So, what are some other things besides fruit that has a lot of fiber?
Well, I had a interesting. I don't eat out because when I started down this journey, I was in a really bad shape. I had a very stressful job. I was a supervisor of over 120 teachers. And I was in charge of everything from buildings to curriculum to evaluation. And I was doing the job and events, which events take a lot of time. And so
Oh,
I was totally burnt out to a crisp when I started down this journey. And so I've taken a really hard line about what I do in my life and what I don't, because like I said, we start down the journey and we think we're up here and we're declining, but we're really down here. And I was in a serious issue and with my brain. And so pushing the needle back is a lot harder than preventing. And so I don't have the pleasure of eating out at restaurants very often. I cook because I need to know what's in my food. And for Christmas, I said, you know what I want for Christmas is I want to eat some Indian food.
yeah.
So I had basmati rice and I had the naan bread, and we sampled goat this and lamb that, and I knew that my blood sugar was going to be 130 plus in the morning, and
Right.
I was shocked. It was like 106, and I said, "Well, how could that be? How could I eat the naan bread and the basmati rice, and it wasn't even brown basmati rice; it was white basmati rice."
Yeah.
And I think it was the fat. They use a lot of fat, and as I've watched, when I add fat to my diet, I'm more tolerant of the carbs. And the University of Seville and the University of Barcelona have done lots of research on olive oil to support their industry. And in one study, they gave senior citizens 1 liter. That's like
Yeah.
almost a quart,
Wow.
1 liter per week to use. And they had significant changes in the brain because the oil, extra virgin olive oil, cleans the amyloid and tau tangles from the brain. So I eat as much olive oil as I can.
Oh, I hear
Don't
you.
do a quart. I do
Yeah.
close to that.
Important thing for you. Oh gosh, that's pretty neat. See,
Yeah.
because you were talking about oils. Remember, we talked about the other day. I was asking you about the uh, what is it? The coconut, the C8,
Yeah. The
MCT
MCT.
oil. Hmm.
Yeah.
And I added some of that too. And I should have tested after this. That's my thing is right now I'm at the point where, I know that quote unquote you don't have to test, but I like the fact that you had encouraged me to do that because I am learning. Like, um, yeah, this is something I need to be adding, and I think that the extra fat
Yeah.
may help me as well.
Yeah. Well, we're still suffering from the research done by Ansel Keys back, I think it was 1956. And he supposedly studied different cultures around the world and their diets to determine which were the healthy cultures.
Right.
And the only thing I learned in statistics, because I'm not a math person, but the only thing I learned in
I'm back.
statistics is if you don't like the numbers, change how you count. Well, that's what Ansel Keys does. And he falsified, I mean, and this research was accepted. And so all of a sudden everyone has to have margarine, and because we can't have fat in our diet. And everything became low fat yogurt, low fat this, low fat that, low fat everything.
Right.
And it's false research. We need fat.
Oh,
And yes, we need healthy fats.
brain
And
power.
yeah, and there's so much money at stake that the American Heart Association was forever slow in changing because they got money from the dairy industry and from the and was it from the margarines and the low fat people.
Right.
and we're still suffering that. And now we have functional medicine, and we're now encouraged to add fat back in our diet. Now you need to make sure you don't add
Healthy fat.
bad fats.
Yeah, so I said the healthy fat. That's important.
Yeah. And so all of the corn oils are very bad for the brain, and no one is going to tell you that. You have to go out and do your research and learn about it. Canola oil is bad. You need to have omegas, and so olive oil, avocado oil are your two main ones. Coconut oil is good. I've had to almost cut it out of my diet because my cholesterol went up. It is a saturated fat, and I'm comped, COMPT, and that's a gene snip where you don't metabolize fats to the optimum. I also have the APOE4 gene that's associated with Alzheimer's, which also doesn't digest lipids well. And so I have to only digest the lipids that my body will digest easily. And that's olive oil and avocado oil. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's neat that you talk about the different genetic testing and things like that because, with my son, we're having the MTHFR
mhm,
and
yeah,
uh,
makes a difference.
and the double copy, yes,
Mhm.
and it does. It makes a difference in a lot of things, and with people need to know about that because it affects your diet,
Mhm.
which affects everything. I mean, it's just
Everything. So, yeah. So what else? Have we left out anything? We talked about fiber. We talked about fat. Oh, I have one point.
okay.
If you go carb free, and you have a lot of anxiety,
Hmm.
and if you exercise, your body will turn the protein into glucose. And I had high glucose on a no carb diet. It is possible.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, you have to measure. If you don't measure, you don't know. And you have to determine what's good for you.
Yeah, it's really important because I can see another conversation that would be good to have is talking about labels, reading them, and understanding them because I've pulled things up and I'm like this has so many carbs, and then they have your fiber,
Mhm.
and you're figuring out your net carbs and stuff, and then they have sugars, and the sugars are different from the carbs,
Yeah.
and it's like hmm.
Hmm.
What does that mean? Huh,
Yeah.
carbs are different than sugars, okay, and
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
And how does that affect that food that I'm gonna eat?
Yeah.
Because if it's
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on your comment um, on labels. The average American eats 134 pounds of sugar per year. And that's one of the reasons why Alzheimer's and diabetes are so high, among another 200 illnesses are so high in our country. And well, I didn't eat that many cookies, and I didn't eat that much cake, and I only had a little bit. And you're right, because 70 to 90% of the sugars are hidden.
absolutely.
And there's a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit everywhere because manufacturers engineer our food for us to crave it.
Yes.
And
It makes
so,
it addictive actually.
yeah, I mean,
That's
it's an
different
addiction. They engineer our food to be
than anything
addictive. So
else.
I have to have this food and I have to have that food. Well, if you start adding up, what do you have to have? You have to have the sugar, the excitotoxins, and there's one more thing, gluten. They all ping the addiction centers in the prefrontal
right.
cortex.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope this has been informative. We've covered a lot of ground. We've covered fiber, fat, and sugar and hidden sugar. And I hope this helps you. And what?
And caffeine, did you
And
mention?
caffeine and other substances that
Yes.
yeah, stimulate the body. And
Yep.
I hope this has been very helpful to you in learning how to and to measure. Yeah, it's really important to measure
Oh my gosh, yes.
and finding out
Definitely huge.
what works for you. So I hope you'll join us again and look for us. Thank you.